Chris Hemsworth watches his daughter Zendaya's final swim on a GoPro, pulled into the abyss by something alive. Like and subscribe for heart-stopping mysteries. Don't miss our latest video. The Pacific Ocean roared in Chris Hemsworth's ears as he clung to his rowboat's oars. The California coast, a jagged silhouette under a bruising sky. His weathered hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of the battered GoPro camera clutched in his lap, its silver casing scoured by 4 years adrift. 4 years ago, in 2017, his daughter, Zendaya Coleman, the youngest swimmer on the US Olympic team, vanished during an endurance swim off the Pacific coast. At 16, she was a national darling, fearless, record-breaking, her smile lighting up headlines. But that day, her GoPro signal cut out, her teammates lost sight of her, and weeks of search and rescue found nothing. No body, no trace, only grief that hollowed Chris, a former Navy sailor, to the bone. He'd never stopped searching, rowing these waters alone, chasing ghosts. Today, a half-submerged buoy had caught his eye, the GoPro strapped beneath it like a message from the deep. Now, back in his coastal cabin, Chris plugged the camera into his laptop, his heart hammering as the corrupted footage flickered to life. The screen showed Zendaya's final swim, her strokes powerful, the ocean a churning blue. Then, a shadow, something massive, fluid, not a shark or whale, crossed the frame. Zendaya's head turned, her eyes wide with terror, before a force yanked her downward, her scream muffled by water. The footage cut to static. Chris fell to his knees, bile rising in his throat. His daughter hadn't drowned. Something had taken her. His shock shattered as glass exploded behind him, the cabin's window, blasted inward by a silenced gunshot. Chris dove behind the couch, his Navy instincts kicking in, as 2 men in black tactical gear stormed through the door, their rifles sweeping the room. "Where's the camera?" one growled, his voice clipped. "Professional." Chris's hand found his old service pistol under the couch, its grip cold but familiar. He fired, the shot catching the first man's leg, sending him crashing into a table. The second man returned fire, bullets shredding the couch, but Chris rolled, sprinting for the back door. He clutched the GoPro, its footage his only link to Zendaya, and burst into the night, the ocean's roar drowning out the men's shouts. Headlights flared ahead, a black SUV blocking the dirt road. Chris veered into the dunes, his boots sinking in sand, the camera tucked inside his jacket. The men were close, their flashlights slicing through the dark, their radios crackling with orders. "Secure the device." No witnesses. Chris's lungs burned, but he pushed on, memories of Zendaya, her laugh, her determination driving him. He reached a cliff overlooking the sea, the drop steep, waves crashing below. The men closed in, their silhouettes menacing against the SUV's lights. Chris had no choice. He stuffed the GoPro into a waterproof pouch, clipped it to his belt, and leaped, the icy water swallowing him whole. The current was brutal, tugging at his limbs, but he kicked hard, surfacing behind a rocky outcrop. The men's lights swept the cliff above, but they didn't follow. Gasping, Chris swam toward a nearby marina, his mind racing. The footage wasn't random, it was evidence, and someone wanted it buried. He hauled himself onto a dock, shivering, and stumbled to a payphone, dialing the only person he trusted, Margot Robbie, a relentless investigative journalist who'd covered Zendaya's disappearance. "Margot, it's Chris," he rasped when she picked up. "I found Zendaya's GoPro. She didn't drown, something took her. I'm being hunted." Margot's voice was sharp, urgent. "Get to San Francisco. I know a place. Bring the camera." Chris glanced back at the cliff, the SUV's lights still visible. He didn't know who these men were or what had grabbed Zendaya, but the footage had cracked open a truth too dangerous to ignore. As he slipped into the marina's shadows, hot-wiring a small boat to make his escape, he vowed to find his daughter or burn down whoever stood in his way. The boat's engine roared to life, cutting through the waves, but a new light flared on the Horizona speedboat, closing fast, its occupants armed and relentless. Chris gripped the wheel, the GoPro heavy against his chest, and floored the throttle, the chase tearing into the night. The stolen boat's engine screamed as Chris Hemsworth tore through the Pacific's churning waves, the San Francisco skyline a faint glow on the horizon. The GoPro camera, tucked in its waterproof pouch, pressed against his chest, its footage of his daughter Zendaya Coleman's final moments yanked beneath the sea, by something alive burning in his mind. 4 years ago, in 2017, Zendaya, the 16-year-old Olympic swimmer, vanished during an endurance swim, her GoPro signal lost, her fate a mystery that haunted Chris, a former Navy sailor, every day. Now, the speedboat pursuing him, its armed occupant silhouetted against the dawn, proved the footage was no accident. Someone wanted it silenced. Spray stung his face as he swerved, the pursuer's boat gaining, their gunfire popping over the roar of the waves. A bullet grazed the hull, splintering wood, and Chris ducked, his service pistol useless at this range. He spotted a cluster of fishing buoys ahead, their ropes tangling in the current, and veered toward them, hoping to lose the speedboat in the maze. The move bought seconds, but the enemy's boat was faster, its spotlight pinning him like prey. Chris's heart pounded, but he thought of Zendaya, her fearless strokes, her defiant spirit, and pushed the throttle harder, the boat shuddering under the strain. The San Francisco docks loomed, a warren of piers and warehouses, and Chris aimed for a narrow gap between two freighters, the speedboat forced to slow. He ditched the boat at a deserted pier, leaping onto the dock, his boots slipping on wet planks, and sprinted into the maze of shipping containers, the GoPro still secure. The pursuers' shouts echoed behind, their radios crackling with orders. "Find him! Get the device!" Chris's lungs burned as he ducked into an alley, his Navy training guiding him through the shadows. He reached a rundown diner, its neon sign flickering, and slipped inside, spotting Margot Robbie at a corner booth, her blonde hair tucked under a cap, her laptop open. The journalist's eyes widened as Chris slid in, soaked and bleeding from a graze on his arm. "You look like hell," she said, shoving a coffee toward him. Chris pulled out the GoPro, his voice low. Zendaya didn't drown. Something grabbed her, and thereafter this. Margot's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up files on Zendaya's casinos clippings, Coast Guard reports, and her own notes on similar disappearances along the Pacific. "I've been tracking cases like hers," she said. "Swimmers, divers gone without a trace. No bodies, no debris. The feds called it currents, but I found pattern-specific coordinates, all near deep trenches." Chris's jaw tightened as he handed her the GoPro. Margot plugged it in, the footage playing on her screen. Zendaya's swim, the shadow, the terrifying pull into the deep. Her face paled. "This isn't natural," she whispered. Before Chris could respond, the diner's door burst open, 3 men in dark jackets storming in, their silenced pistols glinting. Margot yanked Chris under the table, her own Guna compact Glock already in hand. "You brought friends," she muttered, firing a shot that shattered the diner's window, sending patrons screaming. Chris grabbed a chair, hurling it at the nearest gunman, who staggered, giving them a split second to bolt through the kitchen. Pots clattered as they ran, the gunman close behind, bullets punching through metal. Margot kicked open a back door, leading them into a fish market, its stalls reeking of brine and ice. The crowd was their shield, but the gunmen were relentless, shoving through vendors, their eyes locked on Chris. He clutched the GoPro, its footage their only leverage, and followed Margot as she weaved through the chaos, her knowledge of the city their edge. They reached a warehouse, its doors rusted but unlocked, and slipped inside, barricading the entrance with crates. Margot's laptop glowed in the dark, her fingers racing to upload the footage to a secure server. "If they kill us, this gets out," she said, her voice fierce. Chris nodded, his mind on Zendaya, her strength, her fight. The warehouse wasn't safe. The gunmen were circling, their shadows moving past the windows. Margot pulled up a map, pointing to a coastal archive where she'd stashed files on the disappearances. "We need those records," she said. "They'll show us where to look next." As they planned their move, a low hum vibrated through the floor, not mechanical but organic, like a pulse from the deep. Chris's blood ran cold. It was the same sound from the GoPro, faint but unmistakable. The gunmen breached the door, their flashlights sweeping, but the hum grew louder, unnatural, and for a moment, even the attackers froze, their radios silent. Chris grabbed Margot's arm, pulling her toward a skylight. They climbed, the glass creaking under their weight, and dropped onto the roof as the warehouse shook, the hum now a roar. The gunmen shouted, their voices drowned by a crash below. Something had torn through the floor. Chris didn't look back, the GoPro his lifeline, as he and Margot leaped to the next building. the abyss calling from below. The San Francisco dawn was a bruise of grey and gold as Chris Hemsworth and Margot Robbie sprinted across the warehouse rooftops, the eerie hum from below still ringing in their ears, a pulse that matched the haunting sound in the GoPro footage of Zendaya Coleman's final swim. The camera, secured in its pouch against Chris's chest, held the truth of his daughter's fate yanked beneath the Pacific in 2017 by something alive, not a wave or a shark, but a force that defied nature. Their pursuers, the gunmen who'd stormed the warehouse, hadn't followed after the floor collapsed, swallowed by a roar that wasn't human or machine. Chris's boots skidded on wet tiles as he leaped to the next building, Margot close behind, her Glock still in hand, her face set with determination. The Coastal Archive, where Margot had stashed files on similar disappearances, was their next move, but the hum lingered in Chris's mind. A warning from the deep. They dropped into an alley, stealing a beat-up pickup truck from a loading dock, Margot hot-wiring it with practiced ease. As they sped toward the archive, a squat concrete building near the docks, Chris clutched the GoPro, its footage of Zendaya, her terrified eyes, the shadow that took her driving his every breath. 4 years ago, his 16-year-old daughter, the youngest U.S. Olympic swimmer, vanished during an endurance swim, her loss a wound that had carved him hollow. Now, someone wanted that truth buried, and the gunmen were proof of a conspiracy larger than he'd imagined. Margot's voice cut through his thoughts. The archive has record ship logs, sonar data, missing persons tied to the Pacific trenches. If we're lucky, we'll find where Zendaya went. Chris nodded, his jaw tight. And what was that sound? Margot's eyes darkened. I don't know, but it's connected. They parked a block from the archive, slipping through a side gate under flickering streetlights. The building was a relic, its windows boarded, but Margot knew a way in a loose vent leading to the basement. They crawled through, the air thick with dust and mildew, emerging into a maze of filing cabinets and moldy boxes. Margot's flashlight swept across labels Coast Guard reports, 2015-2020, until she found her stash, a locked metal case hidden behind a shelf. She pried it open, revealing dossiers on dozens of vanishings, swimmers, divers, even a research sub, all near deep-sea trenches. Chris's heart sank as he saw Zendaya's name, her case marked anomaly, unidentified contact. Before they could dig deeper, a low hum vibrated through the walls, the same organic pulse from the warehouse. Margot froze, her hand on her gun. It's here, she whispered. The hum grew louder, joined by a scraping sound, like claws on concrete. Chris grabbed the dossiers, stuffing them into his jacket, as the basement door rattled, not from gunmen but something heavier, unseen. They bolted for the vent, but the floor shuddered, cracks spiderwebbing beneath their feet. Margot fired at the door, the shots echoing, but the hum only intensified, a primal call that chilled Chris's blood. They scrambled through the vent, emerging into the dawn, only to find a new threat: 2 black SUVs blocking the street, gunmen spilling out, their rifles raised. "Drop the files," one shouted, but Chris's eyes caught movement in the water nearby, a ripple in the harbor, unnatural and fast. The hum surged, and the gunmen hesitated, their radios crackling with static. Margot seized the moment, tackling Chris into the pickup truck as a shape breached the surfacer, massive, fluid form, too swift to define, its wake rocking the docks. The gunmen opened fire, not at them but at the water, their screams cut short as the shape vanished, leaving only silence. Chris floored the gas, the truck roaring away, the dossiers and GoPro their only leads. Margot, breathless, said, "We need Tom Hardy. He's a captain, knows the Pacific like his own blood. If anyone's seen that thing, it's him." They headed for a remote marina where Tom moored his trawler, the Sea Raven. The grizzled captain, his face weathered by decades at sea, greeted them with a skeptical squint, his pipe smoldering. "You're chasing ghosts," he growled. But when Chris showed him the GoPro footage, Tom's eyes narrowed. "Heard stories," he said, his voice low. "Fishermen, divers, gone near the Mariana Trench. They call it the Kraken's breath of force that hunts, not feeds. Never believed it till now." He pointed to a map, marking a zone where Zendaya vanished, a deep trench known for strange currents. If she's alive, she's there. As they planned a dive, the hum returned, faint but growing, vibrating through the Sea Raven's hull. Tom's face paled. "It's coming," he said, grabbing a harpoon gun. Before they could move, a wave slammed the boat, and a shadow loomed beneath the water, its size impossible, its intent clear. Chris gripped the GoPro, Zendaya's scream echoing in his mind, as the deck tilted, and the abyss reached for them. The Sea Raven rocked violently under the Pacific's wrath, its hull groaning as a massive shadow surged beneath the waves, its presence marked by the same bone-rattling hum that had haunted Chris Hemsworth since he found Zendaya Coleman's GoPro. The footage's daughter, the 16-year-old Olympic swimmer, yanked into the depths in 2017 by something alive burned in his mind as he clung to the trawler's rail, the camera secure in its pouch. Tom Hardy, the grizzled captain, roared orders, his harpoon gun aimed at the water, while Margot Robbie braced against the helm, her Glock useless against the unseen force. The shadow vanished, but the hum lingered, a primal pulse that promised it would return. Chris's heart pounded, not just from fear but from the spark of hope Tom's words had ignited. Zendaya might be alive, hidden in the Mariana Trench's abyss. The marina's lights faded as Tom steered the Sea Raven toward open sea, his map marked with the trench's coordinates where Zendaya vanished, where disappearances clustered. Margot clutched the stolen dossiers, their pages detailing vanishings tied to deep-sea anomalies. "We need answers," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing ahead. Chris nodded, his Navy training anchoring him. Tom said, "It's not just a creature. Something's controlling it." Tom snorted, his pipe clenched between his teeth. "Legends don't pay bounties, but I've seen things lights under the water, tech no fisherman's got. Whatever took your girl, it's got a leash." Their plan was desperate. Dive to the trench with gear from Tom's contacts, guided by a name from the dossiers, Benedict Cumberbatch, a marine scientist who'd studied the trench's anomalies. They reached his research outpost, a floating platform off Guam, its cranes and submersibles dwarfed by the ocean's vastness. Benedict, lean and intense, met them with a skeptical frown, his lab cluttered with sonar charts and glowing monitors. "You're chasing myths," he said, but when Chris showed the GoPro footage, Benedict's eyes widened. "That's no animal," he muttered, pulling up sonar data, massive irregular shape detected near Zendaya's last coordinates, moving with purpose. "It's synthetic or engineered." Chris's blood ran cold. "Engineered by who?" Benedict hesitated, then revealed a classified report. A biotech firm, Triton Corp, had funded deep-sea experiments in the trench, officially for mineral extraction, but rumors hinted at biological weapons. The dossiers confirmed Triton's involvement in the disappearances, their ships spotted at every site. Benedict agreed to guide a dive, his submersible equipped with cameras and harpoons, but warned, "The trench is a graveyard. Whatever's down there doesn't want company." They launched at dusk, the submersible's lights cutting through the black as it descended, the hum returning louder, vibrating through the hull. Chris, Margot, and Benedict watched the monitors, sonar pinging a structure below a lattice of metal, unnatural, sprawling across the trench's floor. "That's no mining rig," Margot whispered, her face pale. The submersible shook, a shadow crossing the cameras, its form fluid yet mechanical, like a machine cloaked in flesh. Benedict cursed, adjusting controls, but a jolt rocked them, warning lights flashing. "It's attacking," he shouted, firing a harpoon that sparked against the shadow's hide. Chris gripped the GoPro, Zendaya's scream echoing in his head as the submersible lurched, metal screeching. Margot spotted a hatch in the structure below, half open, leaking light. "That's our way in," she said, her voice fierce. Benedict hesitated, but Chris's glare silenced him. "My daughter's there," he said, and Benedict dove, dodging the shadow's lunges. They breached the hatch, entering a flooded chamber, its walls lined with tank screechers inside, half human, half machine, their eyes lifeless. Chris's stomach churned. Were these Triton's experiments? A monitor flickered, showing a live feed. Zendaya, strapped to a table, her face bruised but alive, in a lab deeper within. Chris's heart leaped, but the hum surged, and the shadow slammed the submersible, cracking the hull. Water sprayed, alarms blaring, as Benedict fought to surface. "We can't stay," he yelled, but Chris grabbed a dive suit, the GoPro still with him. "I'm not leaving her," he roared, forcing the hatch open as Margot fired at the shadow, its form retreating under her barrage. Chris dove into the icy dark, the structure's lights guiding him, his Navy training battling the crushing pressure. He reached a sealed door, prying it open with a crowbar, only to face a new threat: divers in black suits, Triton's enforcers, their spear guns aimed. Chris fought, his knife slashing, blood clouding the water, but they were too many. As a spear grazed his side, Margot's voice crackled through his comms. "We're coming." The submersible rammed the divers, giving Chris a chance to slip inside, the hum now deafening, the shadow circling like a predator. He was close to Zendaya, but the abyss was closing in, and Triton's secrets were ready to kill. The icy water of the Mariana Trench pressed against Chris Hemsworth's dive suit, the weight of the ocean threatening to crush him as he swam through the flooded corridor of Triton Corp's underwater facility, the GoPro camera still clipped to his belt, its footage of his daughter Zendaya Coleman's 2017 abduction driving his every move. Blood clouded the water from the spear graze on his side, but he pushed through, the image of Zendaya strapped to a lab table, alive but battered, seared into his mind from the monitor he'd seen before the submersible's hull cracked. The hum, that unnatural pulse from the GoPro, and the shadow that attacked their submersible, vibrated through the structure, a constant reminder of the engineered horror circling outside. Chris's flashlight cut through the murky, dark, illuminating steel walls lined with sealed hatches, some leaking bubbles, others marked with Triton's logo, a coiled tentacle around a trident. He'd fought off Triton's divers, their spear guns no match for his Navy-honed reflexes, but more would come. Margot Robbie's voice crackled through his comms, strained but fierce. "Chris, we're surfacing. The sub's trashed, but we've got your signal. Hold on." Benedict Cumberbatch's voice followed, tense. "That thing's back move fast." Chris gritted his teeth, prying open a hatch with his crowbar, the metal screeching as water surged around him. He entered a cavernous chamber, its ceiling a dome of reinforced glass, the ocean's weight visible beyond, where the shadow part machine, part flesh glided past, its bioluminescent eyes locking onto him. Inside, lab equipment hummed, monitors displaying genetic sequences, tanks holding grotesque hybrids, and a central console with a map, red pins marking disappearance sites, including Zendaya's. Chris's heart pounded. She was close. He moved deeper, following signs to a containment lab, when a squad of Triton enforcers, clad in advanced dive suits, emerged from a side passage, their spear guns firing. Chris dove behind a tank, the spear shattering glass, releasing a writhing creature that snapped at the divers, buying him seconds. He returned fire with his dive knife, slashing a suit's oxygen line, the diver clawing at his mask as he sank. Another grabbed Chris, pinning him, but Margot's submersible rammed the dome above, the impact shaking the chamber, cracking the glass. Water sprayed, and the divers scattered, giving Chris a chance to break free, his knife finding the man's chest. He swam on, the hum growing deafening, the shadow now slamming the dome, cracks spreading like lightning. Chris reached the containment lab, its door ajar, and slipped inside, his flashlight revealing a sterile room, monitors flickering, and Zendaya still strapped to the table, her eyes fluttering, a needle in her arm pumping glowing fluid. "Zendaya!" Chris rasped, rushing to her, cutting the straps with his knife. She stirred, her voice weak. "Dad?" Tears stung his eyes as he pulled the needle free, cradling her, but the hum surged, and the shadow breached the dome, water flooding in, the creature's tendrils, metal and flesh fused, lashing out. Chris shielded Zendaya, dragging her toward an escape pod docked at the lab's rear, its hatch glowing green. Margot's voice crackled, "Chris, we're above you. Get to a pod." He shoved Zendaya inside, sealing the hatch as the creature's tendril grazed his leg, tearing his suit. Alarms blared, the facility collapsing, water roaring through the lab. Chris slammed the launch button, the pod rocketing upward, the shadow's roar fading as they broke the surface, the Sea Raven's lights a beacon in the storm. Tom Hardy hauled them aboard, his face grim, while Benedict bandaged Zendaya's wounds, her pulse weak but steady. Margot clutched the stolen dossiers, now waterlogged but intact, detailing Triton's experiments using abducted swimmers to lure and control the creature, a bioengineered weapon. Chris held Zendaya, her breathing shallow, but the Sea Raven's radio crackled with a new threat. Target acquired. Eliminate. A Triton gunship loomed on the horizon, its searchlight sweeping, missiles armed. Tom gunned the engine, the trawler slicing through waves, but the gunship was faster, its first shot rocking the deck, splintering wood. Chris grabbed a harpoon gun, his side bleeding, and fired, the harpoon sparking against the gunship's hull. Margot returned fire with her Glock, useless at range, while Benedict rigged a distress signal, praying for Coast Guard backup. The Shadow's hum returned, vibrating through the sea, and Chris spotted it, a massive shape rising behind the gunship, its eyes glowing. It's not with them, he realized, as the creature slammed the gunship, metal crumpling, screams echoing as it sank. The Sea Raven sped away, Zendaya stirring in Chris's arms, but the dossiers hinted at a larger truth. Triton's mastermind was still out there, and Zendaya's survival made her a target. Chris vowed to end it, the GoPro's footage their weapon, as the hum faded into the night. The Sea Raven sliced through the Pacific's churning waves, its deck slick with spray as Chris Hemsworth cradled his daughter Zendaya Coleman, her pulse faint but steady, her body weakened by Triton Corp's experiments. The GoPro camera, still clipped to his belt, held the chilling truth of her 2017 abduction yanked beneath the sea by a bioengineered creature, a weapon controlled by a shadowy biotech empire. The gunship that pursued them lay in ruins, torn apart by the very creature Triton had sought to harness, its hum now a distant echo in the storm. Margot Robbie clutched the waterlogged dossiers, their pages detailing Triton's abductions, while Tom Hardy gripped the helm, his eyes scanning the horizon for more threats. Benedict Cumberbatch, hunched over a laptop, analyzed the creature's sonar signature, his face grim. "It's not just a weapon," he said. "It's sentient, unpredictable. Triton used Zendaya as bait to control it." Chris's blood boiled, his Navy-honed instincts warring with the raw grief of nearly losing his daughter again. 4 years ago, Zendaya, the 16-year-old Olympic swimmer, vanished during an endurance swim, her loss a void that had driven him to find the GoPro and its horrifying footage. Now, with her safe but fragile, he needed to end Triton's reign. The dossiers revealed a name: Natalie Portman, Triton's CEO, a reclusive genius whose public persona as a philanthropist masked her role as the mastermind behind the abductions. Her private island off the Philippines was Triton's true headquarters, a fortress of labs and security. Chris's jaw tightened. "We go there," he said, his voice steel. "We stop her." Margot's eyes narrowed. "It's a suicide run. She's got an army." Tom snorted, his pipe smoldering. "I've dodged worse. Sea Raven's got fight left." Benedict hesitated, then nodded, pulling up satellite images of the island turrets, drones, a dock for submersibles. They plotted a night assault, using the Sea Raven's speed and Benedict's hacked Triton codes to slip past defenses. Zendaya stirred, her voice a whisper. "Dad, they wanted my blood for it." Chris's heart broke, but her words hardened his resolve. They set course, the ocean a restless ally, but as they neared the Philippines, a new threat emerged: a Triton patrol boat, its radar locking onto them. Tom swerved, the Sea Raven dodging a missile that exploded in the water, rocking the deck. Margot fired a flare gun, blinding the patrol, while Chris manned a harpoon launcher, its spear punching through the boat's hull. It sank, but not before a distress signal pulsed out. "They know we're coming," Benedict warned, his fingers flying across his laptop to jam Triton's comms. The island loomed, a jagged shadow under a moonless sky, its cliffs bristling with lights. They anchored a mile out, launching a dinghy to slip through the reefs, Benedict's codes disabling the outer drones. Chris carried Zendaya, her strength returning but her eyes haunted, the GoPro a talisman of their fight. They scaled the cliffs, Margot's silenced Glock dropping a guard, Tom's harpoon gun ready for bigger threats. The compound was a labyrinth of glass and steel, its labs glowing with the same eerie fluid Chris had seen in Zendaya's veins. They hacked a security door, entering a control room, monitors showing the creature codenamed Leviathan in a massive tank, its tendrils twitching, eyes tracking them. A file on the console listed Zendaya as Catalyst Prime, her DNA key to controlling Leviathan. Before Chris could process it, a voice cut through the room. "You're persistent, Hemsworth." Natalie Portman stood at the far end, flanked by mercenaries, her smile cold. "Zendaya's unique. Her blood woke Leviathan. You can't stop progress." Chris lunged, but a mercenary's rifle butt slammed his chest, dropping him. Margot fired, her bullet grazing Natalie, who didn't flinch, her hand on a control panel. "Kill them," she ordered, but a shockwave rocked the compound, the hum surging, Leviathan thrashing in its tank. Chris's eyes met Zendaya's, and he saw fear but also defiance. She grabbed a wrench, smashing a monitor, sparking chaos in the system. The mercenaries hesitated, and Tom's harpoon skewered one, blood pooling. Benedict hacked the tank's controls, the glass cracking, water spraying. Natalie screamed, "No!" as Leviathan broke free, its tendrils tearing through the lab. Mercenaries scattering. Chris tackled Natalie, pinning her. But a new figure emerged. Chris's old Navy buddy, Ryan Reynolds, now Triton's head of security. "You should have stayed ashore," Ryan said, his gun raised. Chris's heart sank, betrayal from a friend cut deep. Margot dove for cover, her shots forcing Ryan back, but Leviathan's rampage gave them no time. Chris dragged Natalie toward an exit, Zendaya and the others following, the compound collapsing as Leviathan's hum drowned all else. They reached the cliffs, the dinghy below, but Ryan blocked their path, his face torn. "I didn't know about the kids," he said, lowering his gun. Natalie sneered, pulling a detonator. "You'll all sink." Chris knocked it from her hand, the device skittering into the sea, and pushed her toward Ryan. "Take her," he said, as Leviathan's roar shook the island, and they dove for the dinghy, the abyss claiming Triton's fortress. The dinghy bucked against the Pacific's furious waves as Chris Hemsworth gripped the oars, his daughter Zendaya Coleman shivering beside him, her eyes fixed on the collapsing Triton Corp island behind them, its labs devoured by flames, and the bioengineered Leviathan's wrath. The GoPro camera, still clipped to his belt, held the damning footage of Zendaya's 2017 abduction yanked beneath the sea by the creature Triton had weaponized. Margot Robbie clutched the stolen dossiers, their pages detailing Triton's atrocities, while Tom Hardy steered the dinghy toward the Sea Raven, its silhouette a lifeline in the storm. Benedict Cumberbatch bandaged a gash on his arm, his laptop fried, but his mind racing with Triton's secrets. Natalie Portman, Triton's CEO, was bound in the dinghy's bow, her cold defiance unshaken despite Leviathan's rampage. Ryan Reynolds, Chris's old Navy buddy turned Triton enforcer, had let them escape, his guilt sparing them for now. 4 years ago, Zendaya, the 16-year-old Olympic swimmer, vanished during an endurance swim, and the GoPro's discovery had led Chris to this moment, his daughter alive, but Triton's reach still a threat. The Sea Raven loomed, but a new danger roared from the darker Triton gunship, its searchlights pinning the dinghy, missiles armed. Tom gunned the dinghy, swerving as a missile exploded nearby, spraying water. Chris shielded Zendaya, her frail body trembling, and grabbed a flare gun, firing into the gunship's cockpit, the blaze forcing it to veer. Margot's Glock barked, her shots sparking against the hull, but the gunship's turret swiveled, locking on. Benedict shouted, "We need cover," as the hum returned Leviathan's pulse, vibrating through the sea. Chris spotted it, a massive shadow rising behind the gunship, its bioluminescent eyes glowing. "It's not theirs anymore," he realized, as Leviathan slammed the ship, metal twisting, its crew screaming as it sank into the abyss. The Sea Raven reached them, Tom hauling everyone aboard, Natalie's wrists zip-tied to a rail. Chris held Zendaya, her breathing shallow, the glowing fluid from Triton's experiment still in her veins. The dossiers revealed Triton's endgame. Leviathan wasn't just a weapon but a prototype for global control, its DNA tied to Zendaya's, making her a permanent target. Natalie smirked, blood on her lip. "You've won nothing. Triton's bigger than me." Chris's fist clenched, but Margot stopped him, her eyes on a dossier pager name. Jude Law, Triton's silent partner, a billionaire with Pentagon ties, operating from a fortified yacht off Hawaii. "He's the head," Margot said. "We end him. Triton falls." They set course, the Sea Raven cutting through the dawn, but Natalie's taunts gnawed at Chris. Jude was untouchable, his yacht a floating fortress. Benedict hacked Triton's comms, intercepting a signal. Jude was preparing to relocate Leviathan's Korea DNA vault, containing Zendaya's genetic codato, a black site lab. Chris's resolve hardened. He'd die before letting them touch his daughter again. They reached the yacht at dusk, its decks bristling with drones and mercenaries. Tom rammed the Sea Raven into a supply dock, the impact shattering crates, giving them a foothold. Chris carried Zendaya, her strength fading, and led the charge, his navy knife slashing a drone's wiring. Margot's silenced shots dropped 2 guards, while Benedict rigged explosives from the yacht's fuel stores. Tom's harpoon gun skewered a mercenary, blood spraying, but Jude's voice boomed over speakers. "You're too late, Hemsworth. Leviathan's mine." The yacht's deck parted, revealing a tank where Leviathan thrashed, its tendrils lashing, controlled by a neural rig. Zendaya gasped, her hand clutching Chris's. She felt it, her DNA linked to the creature's pain. Chris stormed the bridge, dodging gunfire, his knife finding a mercenary's throat. Margot hacked the rig's controls, her fingers flying, but Jude appeared, a pistol aimed at Zendaya. "She's the key," he said, his eyes manic. "With her, I'll reshape the world." Chris tackled him, the gun skidding, their fists trading blows as the yacht rocked. Benedict's explosives ticking down. Zendaya, defying her weakness, grabbed a wrench, smashing the rig's console, the hum faltering as Leviathan broke free, its tendrils tearing through the deck. Jude screamed, pinned by debris, as Leviathan's eyes met Zendaya's. A flicker of connection, then it dove into the sea, free. Margot dragged Natalie to the bridge, her detonator useless. Triton's empire crumbling. Chris held Jude down, his knife at the man's throat, but Zendaya's voice stopped him. "Dad, enough." Her strength, her mercy, grounded him. Benedict's explosives detonated, the yacht splitting, and they fled to the Sea Raven, the inferno consuming Jude and his dreams. Natalie, handcuffed, faced justice, her silence a final defiance. As the Sea Raven sailed away, Chris held Zendaya, the GoPro's footage their proof, Leviathan's hum a fading memory. Triton was wounded, but its shadows lingered, and Chris knew the fight wasn't over. The Sea Raven carved through the Pacific's restless waves, its hull scarred but unyielding, as Chris Hemsworth held his daughter Zendaya Coleman close, her breathing steady now, the glow of Triton Corp's experiments fading from her veins. The GoPro camera, still clipped to his belt, carried the truth of her 2017 abduction yanked beneath the sea by the bio-engineered Leviathan, a creature Triton had twisted into a weapon. The burning wreckage of Jude Law's yacht, Triton's last stronghold, sank into the horizon, its mastermind consumed by his own ambition. Natalie Portman, Triton's CEO, sat handcuffed in the trawler's hold, her silence a final act of defiance. Margot Robbie sorted the waterlogged dossiers, their evidence damning, while Tom Hardy steered toward Guam, his pipe smoldering, eyes fixed on the dawn. Benedict Cumberbatch typed furiously on a salvaged laptop, uploading the GoPro footage and dossiers to secure servers, his voice grim. "This goes public. Triton's done." 4 years ago, Zendaya, the 16-year-old Olympic swimmer, vanished during an endurance swim, her loss shattering Chris, a former Navy sailor, until the GoPro's discovery sparked this relentless quest. Now, with Zendaya safe, Chris's heart battled relief and the weight of what she'd endured: experiments, captivity, her DNA used to control Leviathan. Zendaya stirred, her voice soft but fierce. "I felt it, Dad. The creature, it wasn't evil." Her words echoed Leviathan's final gaze, a flicker of freedom before it dove into the abyss. Chris kissed her forehead, vowing to protect her from Triton's lingering shadows. The Sea Raven docked at Guam, where Margot's press contacts waited, their cameras flashing as she handed over the dossier sproof of Triton's abductions, experiments, and global reach, implicating politicians, CEOs, and military brass. Natalie's arrest made headlines, her empire crumbling under scrutiny, but Chris shielded Zendaya from the chaos, whisking her to a quiet coastal town in Oregon. Therapy began, Zendaya's nightmares of tanks and needles slowly giving way to sketches of the sea, her strokes bold, reclaiming her love for water. Chris rebuilt too, his guilt easing as he coached local swim teams, his Navy grit now a beacon for kids like Zendaya. Margot's exposés, backed by Benedict's data, triggered global investigations. Triton's black site labs raided, its victim swimmers, divers, children accounted for, some reunited, others mourned. Tom sent postcards from the Sea Raven, chasing new horizons, His harpoon gun retired but his spirit unbroken. Ryan Reynolds, Chris's traitorous friend, vanished. His role in Triton a wound Chris left to heal. One evening, Chris and Zendaya walked the Oregon shore, the Pacific, a gentle hum, not the menacing pulse of Leviathan. She squeezed his hand, her smile a mirror of the girl who'd broken records. "I'm okay," she said, and Chris believed her, the GoPro now a relic in a safe, its footage a testament to their fight. They joined a beach cleanup, Zendaya diving to free a tangled net, her strokes fearless, the sea no longer her enemy. Back home, Chris framed her old Olympic medals beside a new one local, hard-won, proof of her comeback. Margot visited, her latest article on Triton's downfall a Pulitzer contender, her grin fierce. "We did it." Benedict, now advising the UN on deep-sea ethics, sent a report. Leviathan's sonar signature had vanished, free in the abyss, a guardian, not a monster. Chris watched Zendaya swim at a meet, her form cutting the water like a blade, the crowd's cheers drowning out the past. Triton's shadows lingered whispers of surviving operatives. Hidden funds, but Chris knew they'd face them together. The ocean stretched before them, vast but no longer a grave, its depths a mystery they'd survived. Zendaya hugged him, her strength a promise, and Chris felt the weight of 4 years lift, their bond the light that outshone the deep. From a GoPro's chilling clue to a daring rescue, Chris saved Zendaya from a sinister plot. Thanks for listening. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell for more thrilling tales.